A few days ago, a bank manager in Nawada, Bihar was assaulted by a member of the public. There have been individual instances of such attacks against bank staff, but according to bank unions, in general, this is a pointer to the lack of adequate manpower required in banks, especially public sector banks, to run the business. All India Bank Employees Association General Secretary C.H. Venkatachalam says that the most recent instance of assault is another piece of evidence pointing to the deteriorating work conditions in bank branches. Without adequate recruitment, he says that the bank staff headcount has gone down significantly over the last decade. Meanwhile, in the same period, business has grown manifold. He says that looking to technology and saying that will take care of lack of manpower is not a solution. Customer expectations have certainly not gone down either in the same period. According to Mr. Devidas Tuljapurkar, General Secretary, Maharashtra State Bank Employees Federation and former director at the Bank of Maharashtra, says that in the past few years, the country has seen the opening of 55 crore Jan Dhan accounts. And he says if a vegetable vendor gets via UPI payments ₹5 as part of a transaction, he or she would like to see that reflected in a bank statement, a passbook statement physically, rather than in an e-statement. That, he says, is the customer's right. But the banking system across the country does not have enough people to service all such requests. He says the business model has undergone a sea change in the last decade. He says nowadays we have business correspondents, direct sales agents, outsourced or contracted sub-staff, valuers, and so on. He says, for example, if a direct sales agent canvasses for a proposal and once the proposal is sanctioned, then he or she goes out of the picture. The burden of servicing this loan or request falls on the bank, which is inadequately staffed. Mr. Venkatachalam of the AIBEA says that close to 2 lakh positions remain unfilled. The chart on your screens shows how many positions belonging to the sub-staff and clerk categories are still open. He says that some customers could turn unruly if their expectations are not met and they could resort to violence. He says some bank branches do not have security personnel at all. And pointing to the incident that happened in Bihar recently, he says the incident could have been prevented if a security guard had been there. The presence of a guard is a deterrent. He points out that just ensuring the cash and valuables in bank branches is not adequate if human assets become victims. He urges the Reserve Bank and the Department of Financial Services in the Government of India to act quickly with regard to recruitment. He also has a logical question. If India has been plagued by low employment for the past few decades, and here we have the banking sector that requires a lot more headcount, then why not solve 2 problems with just one act, that is recruitment in banks? Mr. Venkatachalam says that the United Forum of Bank Unions had earlier called for a strike on March 24 and 25 of this year to protest against recruitment issues and rising incidents of attacks. With the most recent attack in Bihar, he says they may have to advance the call for the strike. Before we sign off, there's one other red flag that Mr. Tuljapurkar raises. He says without adequate manpower to oversee the process of due diligence that will determine the ability of borrowers to repay, without this in place, we may see a rising incidence of NPAs or non-performing assets among retail loans, especially gold loans. Or worse, we could start to see a rising incidence of fraud as well. For more, come to www.thehindubusinessline.com.